Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome. We will take just a few moments as everybody comes into the room. Please introduce yourselves into the chat. Just signal that it's going to everyone. Let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and what you're most curious about today. We'd also love to know, are you familiar at all with mCLASS in any language or completely new for us today? Again, we're waiting for everybody, so please introduce yourselves in the chat box. Let us know where you're coming to us from, what you're curious about, whether or not you're familiar with mCLASS with /8 at all. And we'll give it a few more moments. Again, please introduce yourselves in the chat box. We'd love to hear what you're curious about and where you're coming to us from. And then we'll start in just a moment. So hi, everybody. I'm Stadtmauer at Amplify, and today we're going to talk about our English and Spanish assessments in mCLASS, and in particular, how you could achieve complete parity between English and Spanish assessment solutions. As I've mentioned, I'm Stadtmauer. I'm the Vice President with Assessment Intervention at Amplify, and I'm joined here today with Kajal Patel below, our Vice President of Spanish Solutions. What we're going to do is first talk a little bit about mCLASS with DIBELS 8th edition for English literacy skills to set the stage of you. I see, thank you for all those introductions. I can see that quite a number of you are familiar with mCLASS and quite a number of you are completely new. So we're going to talk a little bit about mCLASS in general and DIBELS 8. Then Kajal will take over to speak about assessment in Spanish and the latest research about it and introduce mCLASS Lectura. We'll then demo both mCLASS with DIBELS 8 and Lectura. We'll see how the assessments are done, as well as how teachers really get actionable data, and especially, as we'll talk about, the brand new and wonderful side-by-side dual language report. So let's chat about mCLASS with DIBELS 8th edition. Now, Amplify's been doing this work for about 20 some odd years. When we first put the University of Oregon's DIBELS assessment onto a Palm pilot. But of course, research has really moved on since. Research on reading, research on assessment, and of course, the technology themselves have moved forward. So now in 2022, we have DIBELS 8th edition, and we're now introducing mCLASS Lectura in Spanish on devices of all kinds. About 2.4 million students nationwide are being assessed with mCLASS in English. Now that comes out to be about 12% of all K3 students in the country. The product itself, mCLASS runs K6 in both English and K6 in Spanish. But again, when we look at the youngest grades where it's most common, we're about 12% of the K3 students in the country. Let's take a moment and hone in on just one of those students. And Evan is a student that all of you know because he is primarily being assessed in English. English is his home language. And he's not in a dual language school. He does have some exposure to other languages at recess. And we're going to meet some of those other students when Kajal takes over in just a little bit. The question is, with so many students being assessed with mCLASS, why do teachers come to us? Why would Evan's district select mCLASS DIBELS 8 as an assessment? And the answer is because it's really gentle on students. So mCLASS is always teacher administered, digitally scored. Picture the one-on-one moment of a young first grader or a kindergartner, and they're sitting with their teacher. In 5 to 7 minutes, they're done and they go back to their reading. They value that moment, even in second grade, third grade, even perhaps beyond that, they value that one-on-one time with the teacher especially in this era where there's so much screen time. Getting the chance to do this in person makes a very big difference. From the teacher's standpoint, it's also gentle on the teacher. Teachers find that they trust the data, in particular because they've administered the assessment, or maybe one of their colleagues have administered the assessment. It gives them incredibly granular and precise data at the overall risk level, at the skill level, but then even at the sub-skill level, we'll see the instant scoring, the groups, the lessons that are generated, where you can really pinpoint with complete transparency what each child needs. But the real reason why it's gentle on teachers and in the long run is effective for them from a time standpoint is that the student isn't just a number. And when the teacher is administering mCLASS to them, they get an intuitive, holistic understanding of each child as a reader. And in particular, they get to hear, witness, and see that child's productive reading skills. If you want to put here, if a child can read an S or an esse, put it in front of them and let them go, S. And if they make a mistake, read their lips. Likewise, when they're reading connected text, you want to really be able to see, even older students, the teachers really want to hear how children read aloud, because that can really pinpoint any challenges or difficulties they may have. The heart of mCLASS is the DIBELS 8th assessment from the University of Oregon. And this is different from all prior versions of DIBELS in that it was not only validated and well-researched for reading, but it's the only assessment out there that is completely validated for screening for dyslexia. It underwent 2 parallel research periods to make sure that it functions in both ways. The other big difference from prior versions of DIBELS that you might be familiar with is the fact that it not only is designed to determine risk of the most struggling readers, but it's meant to provide rich instructional information for all readers, both those who are at risk, as well as those who are at the grade level or even above the grade level. And we're going to see what that looks like a little bit later in the demo. Now, DIBELS 8 covers all of the foundational skills that you're used to at particular grade level appropriateness. It contains within it a number of time savings approaches that we call gating rules or measure level adaptivity, where you only administer measures if DIBELS believes that it's going to have instructional utility. So just to give an example, at the beginning of kindergarten, you can see on the chart there are 4 measures being done, 1 minute each. But for a child who's really struggling with their phonemic awareness, you might not need to do their phonics as it would be expressed in nonsense word fluency and real word fluency. By the time, say, you get to 2nd grade, you might start with the oral reading fluency, and a child who's a really good reader doesn't have to be assessed on their decoding skills. In addition to DIBELS 8th edition, mCLASS has 4 more measures that were developed by and deeply and fully researched and validated at Amplify: spelling, vocabulary, oral language, which is also functions of listen comprehension, or RAN, rapid automatized naming. And these are available for anybody to just tell us that you want them. We add them on upon request at no cost. And districts find that these could be very useful for dyslexia screening. Some of them are really useful instructionally, like vocabulary in a science of reading context is particularly strong value. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kajal, but before I do, I want to let you know any questions that you might have, please feel free to put into the Q&A box. I will try to answer things while Kajal is speaking and vice versa during the demos, and we'll have a good chance for rich live conversation at the end. I also want to let you know, forgive me for forgetting this, there is a click box at the bottom of your screen if you would like to add on closed captioning. So again, thank you so much. And let's listen to Kajal talk about Spanish assessment.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we're going to go back to the students for a moment. Alan had introduced Evan, a 1st grader. And so let's talk about some other students. Inez is one of Evan's classmates. She began at his school midway through kindergarten. having moved to the US from Nicaragua. Her family speaks Spanish at home, and she's been learning English at school in an ESL pullout model. So she spends a portion of each day receiving instruction in English as a second language. So she's in an English immersion program, and this is a very prevalent model. Then we have Gabriel. And so Gabriel is in a dual language immersion program. And so he is in one of a growing number of dual language programs in the US. This is in response to the growth in Spanish speaking students in the US. And the growth has been tremendous. If you look at just a decade ago, there were about 200 dual language programs across the US, and now there are more than 3,000. And so he's a first grader. He's always lived in the community. He began school in kindergarten. His family speaks Spanish at home. His mother was thrilled to get him a seat in this program. She grew up in Peru. And so in his dual language program, he is going to be able to continue learning Spanish while he is learning English. And Tessa is one of his classmates, and she speaks English at home. Her family speaks English at home. And as soon as she turned 5, her father entered the lottery for a spot in the dual immersion program. These are really coveted spots. And so he was really excited for her to get that spot. And so she's learning Spanish as a second language while continuing to learn in English. And both of them are receiving about 80% of their instruction in Spanish, and receiving 20% of their instruction in English in first grade. But let's focus a moment on Inés and Gabriel. So both of them have language skills in Spanish, and this is an asset as well as their heritage and culture. And Gabriel even already has some bilingualism because of the English that he's been exposed to from living in the US and from his siblings. Now, we know that students' home language is the foundation for their English development or their second language, because Spanish and English have so many connections, and there's evidence of cross-linguistic transfer from Spanish and English, specifically in skills such as phonological awareness and alphabetic knowledge. Those same skills in one language are correlated with the same skills in the other language. And from research, we also know that bilingualism can really improve the cognitive skills of students and give them an academic advantage in other subject areas and improve prospects in the future. But despite that really strong and rich foundation and the opportunity that it offers, as a country, we are struggling to serve students like Inés and Gabriel. What we're actually seeing as a country is that 70%, as many as 77% of Latino students are likely not proficient readers by 4th grade, according to NAEP data. And 42% of Latino students are being served for a specific learning disability. And do they really have a learning disability is a question. And overall, these outcomes are deeply unfair to our students. And so we have to ask, how are we assessing our Spanish-speaking students' skills? So a study done in 2019 at the University of Oregon looked at a group of students, about 400 students, native Spanish-speaking pre-K students. They were assessed in phonological awareness, the ability to identify the first sound of spoken words. And when they were assessed in English, 63% of them were identified as needing tier 2 or tier 3 instruction. However, when they were then assessed in Spanish, that number dropped significantly to 21%. So we can see that assessing in Spanish gives a different picture, a more accurate and complete picture of what the student is able to do. And there's a big piece of that picture that we're missing when we only assess in English. And we need to have the data in Spanish to drive the right kind of support for these students. And educators know this. They've been asking for the right assessment for a long time. They want parity with English solutions, content and word choice to be more culturally responsive. The passages need to reflect the student's background and experiences. They want also research-backed measures based on how literacy develops in Spanish, not just a translation of English measures. And beyond that, the measures need to have been field tested thoroughly, and to have a unified representation of a student's biliteracy. So educators have been saying this, and we committed ourselves to achieving exactly that. And in order to do so, we brought together a team of nationally recognized experts to work with our literacy learning scientists. We worked with Dr. Lillian Duran from the University of Oregon. She's been our main partner in this assessment development. Dr. Doris Baker, Dr. Gisela O'Brien, Dr. Elsa Cardenas Hagen. And in addition to working with the experts, we were working with and getting input from educators across several school districts who were on the ground working with students every day. And the result is mCLASS Lectura, designed from the ground up and validated for benchmark, progress monitoring, and dyslexia screening based on the latest research on how students learn to read in Spanish. We have 3 years of research and development invested, and that is going to continue. Parity with the English assessment in terms of user experience, instructional tools and content, reporting, grade coverage, and overall the ability to drive instructional decisions for Spanish literacy. And when it is used with Dibble's 8th edition, we have a complete picture of the students' biliteracy. So both mCLASS Lectura and Dibble's 8th edition individually tell us what students' literacy skills are in Spanish and in English, and together we have a full picture of the students' biliteracy and what are the assets that they're bringing across both languages that can continue to build their biliteracy. So this is our dual language report for Gabriel, and we introduced you to Gabriel. Alan's going to give a whole demo of the measures and reporting later, but I want to just give you a quick preview of this dual language report that we will get into in a moment, where we are going to be able to see the full picture of biliteracy for Gabriel. Let's talk about the assessment behind this, though. So when we look at the grand scheme of foundational skills assessed by Dibble's 8th edition and Lectura, we see that they're generally parallel, but there are key differences in how these skills are assessed. So same skills, but the way in which they're assessed is different because these skills develop differently in each language. For example, in Spanish for phonological awareness, we are scoring at the syllable level. The fact that Spanish has a simple and consistent syllabic structure means that students are learning to read in Spanish may be working with syllables as the smallest instructional unit, as opposed to phonemes in English, where the attention is required at the individual phoneme level because of the less consistent letter to sound correspondence. And both of these are important, and so our measures are designed accordingly. Additionally, letter sounds are assessed in Spanish, again, due to the more transparent letter to sound connection. And we also have some additional optional measures for comprehension and phonological awareness for grades 1 and 2 in Spanish based on research that represent differences in how Spanish literacy develops as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan to demo Dibble's 8th edition and Lectura.
Hi, everybody. I'm back. Let's take a look at what the assessments look like. So first of all, again, just a reminder, please, you can add any of your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take a whole bunch of them live at the end of the demos. So to set the stage at a couple of different levels, the first thing is, when is this taking place? So mCLASS is a 3-time-a-year benchmark assessment, and you do all students. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes per student in each language. So mCLASS Dibble's 8 will take about 5 to 7 minutes per student, and Lectura will be roughly the same. Progress monitoring is super duper fast and easy. You do it every 2 to 4 weeks for the students below proficiency in either or both languages. And you typically do one measure that's been recommended by mCLASS, and therefore it becomes really, really quick and easy. So it's a one-to-one assessment. The teacher has a device. These are typically touch screens, an iPad, a Chromebook with a touch screen, but a laptop and a mouse works just fine. The student has in front of them printed text, the connected text they're doing for oral reading fluency, the page of nonsense words, or the like. Let's begin by watching a video of Karen assessing Lee, a beginning of your first grader, with phonemic segmentation fluency. This is going to be the English assessment, so it's at the phoneme level.
The sounds in the word am are Your turn. Tell me the sounds in the word am. Tell me any sounds you hear.
So we always start with a practice item, and Mr. Say tells Karen exactly the words of the instructions for Lee so that there's always assessment with consistency.
Okay, here is your first word. For. Here.
So just to give you a sense of what's going on here, the 1-minute timer is counting up and it'll flash yellow 5 seconds before the end. The word that Karen is asking Lee to segment is below it, and beneath that are the correct phonemes. Now, she's using her finger to tap or document exactly as Lee segments the words. So in this case, in 4, he segmented it correctly into the 2 phonemes. Here, he did 3 phonemes, ear. So she tapped under the tapped under the e, and then tapped the ear to indicate it's incorrect. A double tap will be if this child's self-corrected. I'm going to zip all the way forward near the end where you could see what it looks like when he does onset rhyme. The words get more complex.
Ask.
So it's tap and a
First.
drag.
First.
Onset
Bring.
rhyme, 5-second warning. And then he does not segment.
Stop.
Every child wants to know how they
Good job.
did. And Karen sees the score instantly on her screen. He did 23 phonemes correct in the minute, which for a beginning first grader is actually well below the benchmark. It also gives you a sense of how many items you can actually get in a minute when you're doing an observational assessment. Ultimately, the scores are going to roll up to an overall risk score and a composite score. And the scores will be there for Karen at the middle of the year and the end of year, so that way she could see Lee's progress and they could have a conversation about it. Now, let's imagine this were Spanish. Let's say this were Lectura. Here, we're going to take a look at the syllable sound measure, LSS, Unidades en los Sonidos de Sílabas, where the task is to read syllables. We, of course, don't have this in English because of the different morphology between the two. So let's watch. The first thing we'll see is the tooltips and the instructions, just like in English.
Aquí hay algunas sílabas. Cuando yo señale una sílaba, tú vas a leerla en voz alta. Practiquemos. Esta sílaba es des. Tu turno. ¿Cómo se dice?
Des.
Así es. Esta sílaba es des. Dime todas las sílabas que puedas. Cuando yo diga comienza, empieza aquí. Y sigue a través de la página. Lee cada sílaba a medida que la señales. Si encuentras una sílaba que no conoces, yo te la diré. Pon tu dedo en la primera sílaba.
So of course, then we begin the 1-minute measure, same exact user interface as English.
¿Estás lista?
Sí.
Empieza.
Con, fu, fi, som, za, va, vi, pu, ba, ler, lad, vo, ko,
So there was the self-correct.
si, po, go.
All right, so as you can see, this will continue for the full minute, and then again, we'll see the score instantaneously. Now let's take a look over at Andy Brown's first grade class after they've completed their Dibbles 8th English assessment, and then Kajal will show us Lectura. So we always begin with a quick summary of the class. What we're trying to do is really hold together 2 different, sometimes competing things that teachers really want. The first thing is they want to analyze their own data and have complete transparency. On the other hand, they want instant targeted instruction and scaffolding in their data analysis. So let's watch how that happens. We start with a quick summary, and here we could see the composite or overall risk score is telling us that of the 15 students assessed in English, 5 of them are below or well below the benchmark and are in need of strategic or intensive support, possibly or probably even intervention. We also get a quick look by foundational reading skill. Instead of rushing to a different report, we just scroll right down the page and we see a class list the way teachers will be used to, and everything is sortable. So if I click on the composite, I see who the 2 students in need of intensive support are. As I look across the foundational skills, if I click on the word reading, for example, I could see that I have 5 students who are below the benchmark for word reading as a skill. And as we read the precursor skills left to right, we can see 3 of them are struggling actually on precursor skills, and 2, including Emmy, have gotten the precursor skills down and are really need to work on their word reading and their oral reading fluency and accuracy. Now, of course, letter naming is not a foundational literacy skill. It's a measure of risk, so we don't worry about that too much. Every time I see a number, I can get all the way down to the transcript of the measure itself. So here's Emmy's phonemic segmentation. It looks just like Karen's device. So it's very easy for teachers to read. In this case, we know that a student may be making mistakes and then still get to benchmark because they do more words. In this case, we see that Emmy segmented pretty smoothly all the way through. We see the same thing is true on her letter sounds in her decoding. These are the nonsense words. She read each of these ones flawlessly without making mistakes. But when she got to her word reading, we quickly can see that she didn't get that far, and we see which words she's struggling with. Andy Brown may want to take a moment and see what patterns she might notice in the errors. If we look at her oral reading fluency, there we really can see that Emmy needs a lot of work, right? She did not get very far at all in the minute. We could go deeper into Emmy's historical background. In English, and it will be the same in Spanish, the historical information always follows a student from grade to grade, school to school in the district. In this case, Emmy's only been assessed with mCLASS from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year, and we see she's actually improved from well below the benchmark in the red to the below benchmark range in the yellow. And you could see that actually that phonemic segmentation we saw was a huge improvement from where she began the beginning of the year. If we take a look at that, again, as always, if it's a number, you click on it. Here we could see she only did 6 segments in a minute back in the fall. Not very much, but of course, if I happen to know that Emmy speaks Spanish at home, I might have had a different perspective when I get from the score down to the item level. Because in Spanish, I know that there's no huh or wha. And when I look at Emmy reading here, I can see she attempted it but got it wrong. But then when she segmented the who, she could hear the huh and the ooh. And then she could produce here and produce also the wha in the wave. So knowing a bit about the background of the student and being able to look at their data really enhances a teacher's understanding than just a series of numbers on the page. Now, we could see that as we go through this, she's made all this work improving, and then we get to the word reading and oral reading fluency that we're up to. If we look at her progress monitoring graph, we'll understand that picture a little bit better. So if we look at her phonemic awareness graph, we could see she started well below, and clearly mCLASS was recommending, remember I said that was one measure of progress monitoring, it was recommending the phonemic awareness, steady improvement. If this were still during this period, there will be an aim line here that would tell us the trajectory she needs. She's really doing well on that. And then all of a sudden it stops October. And that's because clearly mCLASS recommended that she switch over to working on her letter sounds and her decoding. And we continue to see the progress there. When we get to the middle of the year, we see the results that we've already taken a look at together. And now we can turn to the instruction tab. There are more progress monitoring reports, but let's take a look at the instruction tab, because remember we said that every teacher also wants the instant targeted instruction, and many teachers need some support on that analysis. So when you come to the instruction tab, every time there's new data, every benchmark, every progress monitoring, you can update the recommendations. And for every student, mCLASS has analyzed the error pattern for the teacher. So here's Emmy's patterns across our phonemic awareness, and it noticed that in the word reading fluency, it was the 2 syllable words and the long vowel sounds that caused the challenges. In her ORF, again, 2-syllable words. We have activities that you could do one-on-one with Emmy, but we'll take a look at the groups. For every teacher, this is then rolled up into a very simple, straightforward, plain English, what this child needs next. Because beginning teachers who are beginning their science of reading journey, even these patterns might be a lot to take in at once. So here's the next thing in the learning progression. Samir's well below the benchmark, patterns, what he needs next. Even for Anna, remember I said DIBELS 8 is giving us instructionally useful information for all students. Here are the patterns of what Anna needs to work on. And even Aiden, running in the blue, well above the benchmark, this is what he could work on next. Each child is then placed in a targeted reading group. Now, I don't say small groups. You could have a lot of students in one group if everybody has very similar needs in the classroom. And here's Emmy reading words with complex patterns. This is what they're working on, the pedagogy. Things to think about for all the English learners in the group. If there are students in the group who speak a language variety of English that's not the same as the general English of school, approaches to how we could do that also. Maybe they speak Appalachian English at home, or Black English, or Cajun English, or any one of the 100 varieties or so that have really well-formed grammar, but are not the code that we're teaching them in reading. So we want to support them as well as the English language learners. Here are the patterns. There's that 2-syllable word pattern. And then we have 10 to 20 minute, really scripted, easy to use activities. Teachers don't need a lot of prep to do this. If there are any manipulatives or posters you could see here, it's all embedded in the PDF. They could bring it up on a laptop or a device. They could print it out and use it and quickly do small group or targeted instruction. If you are using our CKLA curriculum, you'll see that we link the group to further resources that can be found within the core curriculum as well. So I will pause here and now turn it over to Kajal, who'll walk us through the reporting for Lectura, which I'm sure you all know is going to be about parity. So take it away.
Okay, so thank you, Alan. So what you see here is this is what the screen that that a teacher will see before they get into the reporting. And what Alan just showed you is behind the pink tile that says reading. And over to the right, you see a purple tile that says Español. So if I were to click on that tile that says Español, I go into the reporting, and the first thing I see is this report, a summary of my class. I won't get into the details here because you saw exactly what this looks like with DIBELS 8th edition data, but this is with Lectura data. And so here the teacher, Andy Brown, sees the class, the summary of the summary, scrolling down, can see the list of students. We have Gabriel here. We can look at the item detail of Gabriel and the specific errors and self-corrects that Gabriel made in this particular measure, which was fluidez en los sonidos de sílabas. This was the same measure that was demonstrated earlier. And with instruction, similar, again, it's the same concept, that all of that information is analyzed and the students are put into suggested groups based on their results. And we have Gabriel that is down here in the decoding group. We can see the patterns that were observed with Gabriel and his classmate Peter that were put into the same group. An activity, again, these are short activities. Oh, there it is. Sorry about that. Short activities. And in particular, this activity is focused on digraphs. And, you know, this one in particular is 5 minutes. The activities are short. The teacher is given, if there are any materials in this one in particular, the teacher is able to print these tarjetas de palabras that have these digraphs. But I earlier showed you a hint of the dual language report. And so we're going to get into that because this is really what provides the picture of the students' biliteracy, bringing together the data from DIBELS 8th edition and Lectura. And so right up here at the top, so this is Gabriel, right up here at the top, we have just a quick overview of where he is overall. In English, he's developing. In Spanish, he's on track. And there's more information describing this up here at the top of the report. Gabriel demonstrates higher performance on Spanish literacy assessments than in English. He's applying strong foundational skills in Spanish to read and comprehend text, and may need additional support in English. And taking that down into more detail, here we see skill by skill, side by side, the performance in English and Spanish across these skills. And so we can see that in Spanish, Gabriel is at benchmark in letter names, phonological awareness, and decoding. And so these are skills that can be used to build the same skills in English. It says here at the top, teach Gabriel to apply the letter sound, the Spanish letter sound knowledge to English, review letter sound correspondences that are similar across both languages, and point out those that are different. But again, let's get into more detail on how the teacher can actually do that. So in particular, we're going to focus on two skills for Gabriel, because we have in phonological awareness and letter sounds and decoding, where we can leverage his skills in Spanish to build in English. And let's focus here on phonological awareness. And you can see here on the right, there's a reminder that the way that these skills were assessed was different. Same skills, but just assessed differently. In English, where Gabriel is below benchmark, this was assessed using phonemic segmentation fluency. Whereas in Spanish, this was assessed using syllable segmentation, fluidez en la segmentación de sílabas, where he's benchmark. And here we have information again about what the teacher can do to leverage the skills in Spanish to build in English. In particular, there's guidance here for cross-linguistic transfer. Here's cross-linguistic transfer for phonological awareness. And this document has a lot of information in it to support teachers. In particular, at first, there's some embedded PD on what transfers across languages and what makes transfer more difficult. So for instance, sounds that exist in both languages are going to be easier for dual language learners to hear, whereas sounds that are unique to a particular language may be harder to read and to pronounce. Then we have some example vignettes given to the teacher to support students who may be English dominant speakers. So if we think back to Tessa's an English dominant speaker. And so if we're working on phonological awareness with her, we would do that in one way. Whereas with a Spanish dominant speaker, which is Gabriel, we would do that in a different way. For instance, if we're doing blending, we would start with the word libro in Spanish to demonstrate that blending, and then go into bat. And then further, there are many tips and examples that the teacher can use to incorporate into lessons that they are already giving. And again, how to do that for a student in English and then also in Spanish. Further down, again, more resources and references to show some of the differences between English and Spanish specific to phonological awareness. For instance, the vowel sounds, the unique vowel digraphs, etc. And so we talked about Gabriel, but what would this look like for Tessa, right? We were looking at the report for Gabriel. For Tessa demonstrates higher PA and decoding skills in English than in Spanish. And so the guidance would be to, during Spanish literacy instruction, focus on sounds and letter correspondences that are unique to Spanish, practicing at the syllable and phoneme levels. Also available to teachers are Home Connect letters for English and Spanish. And so these are the results of Dibble's 8th edition, as well as the results from Lectura that are provided in parent and caregiver friendly language to explain what it is that's being assessed and how their child is doing. Both letters, the letter from Dibble's 8th edition, as well as the letter from Lectura, both letters are available in English and Spanish. So we're able to communicate with Inez's parents, Evan's parents, Tessa's parents, and Gabriel's parents. The letters not only explain the results, but also provide the parents or caregivers with activities and things that they can do at home with the child to reinforce where the child needs support. And we've really just given you a hint of the reports that we have. What we showed today is really the teacher-facing reports, but there are so many more reports that are available. So Alan shared a link in the chat to our reporting guide. So I invite you to save that link and download it and take a look at that guide, because there are a number of administrator reports that allow comparison across populations, looking at fidelity, slicing and dicing across demographics, looking at growth, a variety of things in our reporting that are available at the fingertips of administrators and teachers. I also want to take a moment. Alan earlier mentioned when he was talking about the instruction that if you use CKLA, that there is that there's guidance connecting you to what you can use in CKLA from the DIBELS 8th edition assessment. Like Amplify CKLA, we also have Amplify Caminos, which is designed to spark curiosity in kids. It is our comprehensive Spanish language arts program built on the science of reading. We've designed Amplify Caminos around topics that interest kids, from science to world history to great literature and art, similar to CKLA, and students are able to build connections across units and grades, deepening their understanding and engagement each year. And so there's the knowledge component, which is conocimiento, and we have the skills component that's going to be launching lectoescritura in 23-24 school year. We also have a very exciting event on May 19th and invite you to join us. We're excited to host our Biliteracy Symposium. It's an all-day virtual event. We have over 2,000 people registered so far. We have some amazing speakers lined up, including our keynote, Dr. Pedro Noguera. He is a leading scholar of urban public education, equity, and school reform, and an advocate of bilingual education. We have Dr. Lillian Duran, who co-developed the Lectura assessment, and she has extensively studied Spanish literacy assessment, especially in the youngest learners. And we also have Dr. Elsa Cardenas Hagen, who's a bilingual speech-language pathologist and certified academic language therapist. She also wrote Literacy Foundations for English Learners. And in addition to the three of them, we have many other speakers as well. It's going to be an inspiring and informative, discussion-rich day, and you can register on our website or at the link here, and Alan can drop that in the chat. And with that, I want to share also, just invite you to our website to take a look at more information and to contact us if you would like us to talk to you more about Lectura or DIBELS 8th edition. We're happy to meet with you and your team individually. So this is our information so that you can get in touch with us. And with that, I'm going to pause and look for your reflections, questions, and thoughts on what we shared. And feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. And so we're happy to stick around for a few minutes. Don't be shy. We can, yes, Maricela, what is the length of teacher PD? So one of the great things about DIBELS 8th edition as well as Lectura is it's as Alan mentioned, it's really gentle on the teacher, and it's easy to learn. The typical length of PD is a day, but then there are add-on PD sessions that can be done, right, to go deeper into data analysis, et cetera. But for initially using the assessment, it's a day. And this is available in multiple modes. We have in-person, remote. We do have an online course as well. And so there's multiple options available. We also have a question, mCLASS. Is mCLASS an additional program if we are already using DIBELS? If you are using DIBELS with Amplify, you actually are already using mCLASS. And then Lectura is an add-on to that. I don't know if I understood that question completely.
Yeah, it's okay. Kelly, you may be using Dibbles through Dibbles data system, and mCLASS is, is an add-on. But if you reach out to us at the number that I just dropped into the chat, we'll be able to chat about pricing and how you get from point A to point B, and especially to Lectura. I think we had a question about higher level assessments in Lectura, but let me just answer Bruce. When you get everybody who registers, will get the recording, and you can also get a certificate at that time.
In Lectura, in terms of, so in higher levels, in grades 3 through 6, we have oral reading fluency and a comprehension measure, which is called Cual Palabra, which is like the maze measure in Dibbles 8th edition. And so just in case, because I apologize, I can't remember from the beginning, just in case you're not familiar with what the maze measure is, this is a measure where the student receives a passage and they read the passage, but in the passage, every 7th word is a fill in the blank, and they're given 3 choices. One is the correct answer, one is a near distractor, and one is a far distractor. And they're done in such a way to where you would have to understand what you are reading in order to choose the right word. And so in that way, it measures comprehension. Yes, so there was a question, are we considering assessing in other languages as well? And Alan answered, everything is a possibility, but not yet. We recognize that there are, there's been a lot of growth in the English language learner population, and it's not just about Spanish, right? We're talking about Spanish here today. About 75% of English language learners in the US are Spanish speakers. That's though leaves 25% that aren't, right? We have Vietnamese speakers, we have Mandarin speakers and Arabic speakers and many other languages. And so, we're sometimes asked, well, how do we support those students? And I'm going to try to paraphrase the feedback from Dr. Lillian Duran when she has been asked this question, because we still want to do something to support those students, right? And so some things that she has said is, talk with the parents and try to get an understanding from them. There may be through a translator, of course, it's not an assessment, but to communicate with the parents of what the child is able to do, and encourage the parents to maintain the home language. Keep speaking to the child in that native language. I read a really good quote today, and I'm not going to say it right, but it's something about, if we're not strong, whatever you're not strong in language 1, you are not going to be strong in language 2. And whatever you are strong in language 1, you can be strong in that in language 2. So encourage the parents to continue to develop that language that the child already has at home. Being bilingual is a gift, and it has so many benefits long term. And the other thing is that, there are websites, and I can try to share this as a follow-up, because I know there's a website listed in Dr. Elsa Cardenas Hagen's book, and I just don't have it with me, but you can look and see what basic information about other languages and the sounds that they have in common with English, just to build some awareness of, Alan was alluding to earlier when he was showing some data about, if a child speaks Spanish, you might know about what's happening with the H, and the W. And so there's some other things you can know there. But sorry, I rambled on that one, but I hope it was helpful. Other thoughts and questions? And again, if you would like to see more of the assessment, please invite us to talk with you. We would love to do a presentation or a discussion with your team, and we can show the measures and go through them in more depth. Thank you everyone for attending. We'll stick around for a little bit longer in case there's any more questions. Okay. Should we call it an afternoon? Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.